All units, please respond. We got a 7467. Two idiots spilling the tea about their neighbors.
Welcome to episode 150.
Tackle toxic stress.
There
goes the neighborhood.
Hey, Balanced Bougie crew and stressed out CRN trolls. Shout out to our Bougie crew in Massachusetts and Bangladesh.
Got a question, comment, or buck-wild neighbor story? Hit us up on our line on 239-300-7276.
If you would like to sponsor our show, send us an email at info@crazyrichneighbors.com to inquire about opportunities. And a big old thank you to our sponsor, Podcast Junkies in Boca Raton, Florida.
And you guys, be sure to check out our full episodes on YouTube. Subscribe to never miss an episode.
Joining us today via Zoom is Dr. Gala Gorman. Dr. Gorman is an acupuncturist, a naturopath, and the author of several books, including her latest, What's Your Kryptonite? Manage the Toxic Stressors Threatening Your Superwoman Status. Welcome, Dr. Gorman.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So what do you refer to as kryptonite?
Well, the kryptonite concept was kind of bubbled up out of some discussion I was having as I was finalizing the book and trying to figure out exactly what to call it. And I was talking to somebody and I said, it's kind of like kryptonite, like it's not just sitting there in plain sight, but we know our energy is being drained. So there must be something going on that that's actually toxic, and we've got to figure out what it is. And it's the same way it happens in the world of the Avengers, superhumans, where they are familiar with that feeling of their energy being kind of drained, and they say, well, I got to figure this out because I cannot save the world if I've got kryptonite draining my energy. So,
And you have to save yourself before you can save anyone else.
That is so true.
100%, yes.
So from your website, drgala.com, a 2006 study showed that women are almost twice as likely to be affected by anxiety disorders. Symptoms such as food allergies and sinus irritation and sinus infections, are those stress related?
90%, the research shows that 90% of disease can be traced back to stress.
Oh my God.
And I personally think the statistic is higher than that. People think, well, it can't really be that high. And I say, absolutely, it's higher than that, because they don't factor in all the ways stress creates dis-ease and then it escalates to disease. So, stress disrupts our body's ability to be able to run efficiently. And when that process is disrupted, then everything kind of starts to go haywire, and the result is disease of some sort. And so any symptom, the way I like to help people kind of get their head around it, is that we've been conditioned to believe that when a symptom shows up, that's kind of like the first sign of something.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like people to think about is that when the symptom shows up, that's been around for a while, and your body was managing it until it couldn't manage it anymore. And it finally just sort of like threw in the towel, said, this is more than I can handle. And then some symptom pops up, headache, digestive issues, skin issues, hypertension, you name it. Certainly even worse things than that, but you name it, it is, if you really work to unravel it back to where it started, it was some stressor that, just accumulated to the point where your body said, I can't deal with this any longer. And we kind of saw signs and clues, but we manage to kick the can down the road until the symptoms really start popping out. And then it's like, oh no, I can't have this. And I start, trying to whack them all the symptoms back. So,
So when one is encountering like a stressful period or sustained levels of stress, like what's happening in the body biochemically for women?
well, biochemically, cortisol is released essentially to counteract the stress. And that um, cortisol releasing process is controlled by our adrenals to kind of simplify the process. And so what tends to happen when we have been chronically stressed for an extended period of time, our adrenals um, kind of burn out is probably the best way of describing it. If you think of a car and you've got the pedal to the metal essentially, but you've got the car in park, right?
Yep.
And so that you've got the engine revving 100% and the car's in park. And, how long would that engine run at that level, sort of going nowhere, just spinning in place before it finally, overheated? And that's kind of what we do to our adrenals. And then, I deal with mature women, you guys, your audience is midlife. And I find that, you know, more women are entering what we would think of as midlife in their mid 30s and starting to deal with some of these issues as early as their mid 30s. So, don't think of midlife as, you're going to kick the can down the road till you're 60, that we tend to have already put some of these things in place that we've got to start reversing before we get to the point where we add on the additional stressors truly related to aging. But the midlife process adds additional stress, as our hormones change.
Oh
And
God, the hormones.
yeah. And that's another thing that women then are counseled to just attempt to replace the hormones, use hormone replacement therapy. And you can never replace your hormones in the way that your body would make them naturally. So, whenever you're trying to artificially replace hormones, it's creating another imbalance somewhere.
Oof.
And so,
Scary.
what really needs to happen is you need to deal with the stress, reverse the, sort of stress that is easily identifiable, right? When we've, taken on more than we can humanly manage. And, there's certain things we just know we're taking on, things that are causing us stress. But then there's a lot of stress that is like kryptonite that we don't see and we don't really aren't fully aware of. And we've got to figure out what's going on there as well to really reduce our toxic load so that our body kind of frees up some extra energy, because that's all you really need to get through this midlife transition is just a little extra energy to so that your body can manage it,
Right.
and it's a natural adjustment period. The human body was designed to be able to manage the adjustment. So to think that we need to interfere with that, the only reason why we need to interfere is because we haven't given our body enough TLC, if you will, so that it's prepared, that it can handle that additional stress. It tends to be kind of the straw that broke the camel's back when women get to that point. So back to your question about what's physiologically happening when your cortisol has been like essentially on rev nonstop, well, now your body isn't regulating cortisol like it should so that your body is able to do rest and repair at night. That's the reason why we tend to start sleeping more restlessly, because we don't cycle the way
Yeah.
we normally should cycle. And so then the next thing you know, we're not sleeping great. Obviously,
Mhm.
that's not helping with the fatigue, but then we tend to come up with some strategy for trying to force ourselves to sleep when our body's not naturally um,
Ah.
winding down. And then, um, we just have created another issue,
True.
right?
Mhm.
The circadian rhythm gets thrown off,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, as you're talking, what I'm thinking is, there's like primary, to me, there's like primary stress, which is like the stress happening to you. And then there's what I sort of think of as like a secondary stress, which is like if your partner, for example, is like stressed and that their stress is bleeding onto you and,
Yeah.
becoming your stress. So obviously you can control or try to control your own stress, but how do you control this external stress that is like sort of coming at you from other sources?
That's a good question.
I talk to a lot of women that have ended up in some sort of caregiving role
Mm-hmm.
for like an elderly parent, or I talked to a woman in the last week or so who had been raising a child on the autism spectrum. And I know people who have dealt with that, and it's a incredibly stressful on the parent. And so whether it's your mate or it's a loved one in some other capacity, um we tend to want to make it better for them, right? We want to do what we can to kind of offset their um fate, if you will. and and so the only thing I can really say there is that, firstly, if you go into a period like that and you're in pretty good shape, then you'll be able to handle the extra stress, especially if it's a fairly short period of time. Let's call it 3 months, 6 months, something like that. If it's a manageable period of time, you'll be able to handle it. But just like we just referred to, going into menopause or the hormonal changes, if you're already burning the candle at both ends and running on fumes, is the way I typically
Mm-hmm.
describe it, then you go into some really stressful period that isn't even maybe your stress,
Mm-hmm.
but it's affecting you. Well, now, you know, where are you going to get the extra energy from?
Right.
Where are you going to get the extra juice from?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we start turning to stimulants and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to offset it, which, um, you know, works in the short term. And again, if the problem is a week or two, or even 2 or 3 months,
Yeah.
you'll probably like cruise through that. Whew, glad that's over with. I'm a CPA in my former life,
Oh,
and
wow.
Oh.
yeah, and I
Okay.
yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
yeah, so I like to talk to women who are business professionals because I totally get you, right? I was you, and to a degree still am you, right? So, I was a CPA, I ran an accounting firm.
Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah, and there is no, I mean, believe me, if there was a way to manage the seasonal um spike in demand
Right.
uh, in a way that didn't just totally stress everybody out, I would have figured it out, because
Right.
literally that was my mission, right? To figure out, how do I even out this
Mm-hmm.
demand
Right.
over a period of time that lasts more than just a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, you know, 20 years of wrestling with that. And
Hard.
Wow.
like, nothing works, right?
No.
Like, you can do everything in your power to prepare and to smooth things out, but generally speaking, every year we were just gonna go into it and do battle for 3 months and
Mhm.
then recover, right? So when I tell you that you can survive a few months and reverse the damage from that, know that I'm speaking from experience,
Right.
right? But if we had essentially tax season that lasted for 2 years, right? Like,
I worked in
you,
advertising in New York City. I was
yeah,
in tax
yeah,
season for 12
right.
years of my life.
Yeah. And so you understand then, right? Like when I'm saying
Oh, yes.
that when it's just one project after
Yeah.
another and somebody's got to fire and somebody's got to demand that this campaign has to launch next month, and knowing all the preparation that has to happen to make that happen. So um that then becomes a um we tend to think, because it's kind of like the frog in the pot of boiling
Right.
water. Like, like just think of like the early days when you got your job, and how excited you were to work at a prestigious firm in New York City, and you were excited with every project they let you
Oh, sure.
get your
Yeah.
hands into, and as you got more experience, you got better, and they're like, oh, she's really good at this, like pile it on, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so we're that frog in that nice warm pond with the gentle rain falling, right? And then all of a sudden, like somebody's turning the heat up and it goes like hotter, hotter, hotter.
Yeah.
And I'm
It's
sobbing
know
and I'm
it.
sobbing in the executive bathroom for half an hour and I
my
can't
God.
stop.
Yeah.
But it sounds like
And you're literally boiling,
And I
right?
literally, if I didn't
Yeah.
get another job that had better hours and much higher pay, I literally, Dr. Gala would have ended up on some sort of pills because
like most people in advertising,
Yeah.
because of the level of stress.
because of the stress. And I was a single young woman, and I certainly wasn't going to move home to mom and dad, nor would they have like supported me as an adult. So like I had, I had no
Yeah.
backup plan, so
To
I
make
had
it
to like
work.
stick it out, but it was killing me.
Yeah.
And so this is a tremendously beneficial discussion for anybody who's hearing this, and maybe you're in that situation where you're starting to feel the heat being turned up,
Mm-hmm.
and so the most important thing you can do is um offset it as much as possible in every free moment you get.
But
And you're gonna have to use some really ninja tactics. I mean, like hardcore, like stuff to offset the stress. And I'm talking next level meditation, yoga, like every time you get a chance, um what you want to do is go out after work and have 5 cocktails.
yeah.
But
I
instead
frequently
of
did that.
Okay.
yeah, but instead of that, you've got to go to the yoga studio
I did that
and
too.
and get your zen on, right?
Yeah.
And so the um it's just going to be really important that you do everything you possibly can to keep the temperature in the pot to the
Mhm.
point where it's not literally boiling you.
Right.
And then if the temperature is going to stay just under boiling forever, then
Yeah.
you've got to do essentially what you do and what you did and start looking for your exit strategy.
Yeah.
Like, because you literally cannot
It's
live like
unsustainable.
that.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So is that where your MOLT method would be something that would be useful to someone in that? So what is your MOLT method and how does someone sort of get into the discipline?
So MOLT is an acronym, and I came up with it because one, I like acronyms, but two, it just worked because we need to shed stress, right? And so creatures in nature shed stress seasonally when the time is right? When they need to, grow out of their trappings, they just shed them.
Right.
And so it just seemed really appropriate to call my method the MOLT method. And so MOLT is an acronym. M is for mindset, O is for order, L is for lifestyle, and T is for toxins. And so M is for mindset. And there are some, let's just say there's more you can do than you think. And I mean, just little trick hack things that make no logical sense, but work remarkably well. And so in my MOLT method program, I have all kinds of little tools and exercises that I have designed to be able to be used kind of in a pinch. It's not something where you have to take the afternoon off and go sit somewhere quiet. I want things that literally I can grab and do, in the bathroom, hopefully not
Instead of
trying to
sobbing.
I know.
wiping sobs away, right?
We used to have
And
a
so,
chant. We would say, "In with anger, out with love. In with anger, out with love."
Oh my God. Woosah.
Not in with love, out with anger. We did in with anger, out with love.
But any little quick tips that you can tell us and our audience that maybe, okay, if you go into the bathroom instead of sobbing, what can you do? Like, oh.
so the first thing you do is breathe. Okay. So, and honestly, when you're really anxious, breathing will be hard.
Yeah.
So you'll know how anxious you are by how hard it is to breathe. And so if
true.
you can rhythmically breathe,
Like what you're thinking, like breathe in, hold it,
Yeah.
breathe out for like 5 seconds, or what's the
so
cadence?
typically what I do is breathe in 2, 3, 4, breathe out 2, 3, 4, and you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth.
It does feel instantly relaxing, but
does.
when you're in the heat of stress, it's like the last thing that
hard.
you want to think about, that you think you have the bandwidth or the time to stop and do, but it only takes a few
And
seconds,
you're also
right?
a bit like F breathing, honestly, when you're really wound
Yes!
up.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
true. It's a discipline, no?
So yeah, and you have to say, okay, this is why in the program I really talk about being prepared in advance, kind of assembling these little tools in a way that when you need it, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to dig around for it. You like have it on a little note, even if it's just kind of a cryptic note to remind you of like what to turn to.
Yep.
Because you are 100% right. We don't, our lizard brain, our reptilian brain is in fight or flight mode at that point. It has no interest really in making you feel better. All it wants to do is save you from dying.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so the only way you're going to get some control over that situation is to have an intervention ready and to like self intervene when you're in crisis is something that happens only with maturity. So the good news though is maturity can happen at any age after puberty. Okay. So basically, as we become more and more emotionally mature, we get gain more perspective and the ability to kind of catch ourselves when we're triggered and we're moving into that space where we have literally no emotional control. we have just that nanosecond of a gap to say, okay, whoa, breathe, and then it's just breathe, just breathe. Now I've got some more ninja tactics, but I will tell you that if you can't breathe, you won't be able to handle the more ninja tactics.
Okay.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Mhm.
But you can't just like skip the breathing
Right.
because the breathing is the only thing that's going to start soothing your nervous system and give you just like a second, a 2 seconds, 10 seconds,
Mhm.
20 seconds to then go, okay, what can I do that really will shift this? And then if you really want to shift it, there are some other things you can do, practice appreciation,
Mhm.
there's some of the other like things that again are counterintuitive, but really will totally snap you out of it.
How fast can one get through the program? Sorry.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a
Yeah,
friend.
right.
Like,
So,
how many
so
modules? Like, how long is it?
yeah, so
Well, you get stressed out by the length of this program.
so I specifically designed it so there's all kinds of little chunks, where you
Okay.
can just watch it, 10 minutes at a time
How many
because
modules?
so there's four main modules, MOLT,
Right.
but then there's the introduction and the conclusion, and a couple of the modules kind of like lent themselves to like having sort of a two-parter kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I think there's like maybe 8 or 9 modules total
Okay.
in the total program. And then, probably each module is about an hour. So, but again, I designed it so that you can consume it in little chunks
Mhm.
and so that you can go back and just go back to that one little piece that
Mhm.
you really are like, okay, I could use some help. And I remember there was something about that, like, and that was in this part of the program and it was in this lesson. And you can go back and literally listen to 10 minutes and be like, ah, yeah, I got it.
Mhm. Good stuff. I
So anyway, the mindset is the M, O is for order. And so when we take on more than we can handle, then we end up with a lot of open loops that are kind of unfinished business. And every one of those little unfinished pieces of business have a bit of our mind share.
Mhm.
And so I talk about ways to help sort of settle that down. And then lifestyle is, probably some things that you would expect, diet, exercise, that sort of thing, but not in the way you would expect to hear. Um, I don't recommend extreme exercise or extreme dieting.
What about
So
extreme not drinking?
yeah,
hell.
even that, right? I love a glass or two of red wine myself. Like, do I um think it's a good idea to go out and get hammered regularly and
Oh,
spend
the
a day,
anxiety hangovers?
I'm too
Yeah.
old to
I
get
mean,
hammered
yeah.
anymore.
So uh, so here's the way I explain it because, drinking period now is just one of those things that is um getting a lot of scrutiny, let's just put it that way. Especially for people in my field, everybody's like, how can you tell people they can drink even one little drop?
Ugh.
Alcohol's terrible for
Oh,
you, right?
God.
And and so
This is the wrong
so
show for that.
yeah, I am in reality that alcohol is toxic and it doesn't do me any good. I'm not in la la land that
Right.
I'm actually consuming mineral water um,
Getting your
What about the
and
resveratrol,
yeah, yeah. If
polyphenols.
Right.
if you want to get the benefits of grapes, there are better ways to do
Eat
that.
But they're
some.
not as fun.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'll tell you is that if you're going to drink, make sure it's fun and
Okay.
drink nice wine. You know what? Life is too
Yeah,
short.
we're
to
good at
drink.
that.
Doctor's
We're good at
orders.
that. Okay,
And
check.
so drink good wine.
Yeah, that's not
Enjoy
gonna give you a headache and a
Exactly.
hangover, you know?
enjoy
Yeah.
it with friends, like make it fun. And
Right.
then know that, if you really want to support your liver to burn more fat, then the less you drink the better,
Yeah.
right?
Facts.
Yeah. And so but I don't want anybody never enjoying a piece of birthday cake or a cupcake or a
Good.
chocolate chip cookie or, like l- food is one of the ways we really enjoy
Yes.
life, right?
Yes.
And so that's a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than we typically hear. And that's the reason why when I talk to people, women in particular, they often tell me that they uh, are on some crazy diet. And I mean, I just talked to somebody this week um, who was struggling because she's under a tremendous amount of stress, and she had started Jenny Craig.
Oh
And
God, that food tastes so
yeah.
bad.
And
not
she
even real
said, "Well,
food.
I went back to Jenny Craig
It's
because
like
nothing else
astronaut
was
food.
working, and that worked before. And now not even Jenny Craig is working."
That's so
And
1998.
and
Sorry, Jenny
and I
Craig.
said,
You're getting sued.
I'm looking at your scan and I'm seeing artificial food and all
Uh-huh.
these
It's like
other things that are
freeze-dried.
basically that are
Chemicals.
basically pointing me to the fact that you're not eating a real food, high quality, nutrient dense diet, right? And she's like, oh, like people just want a quick fix. And um I I want people to figure out how to eat what they like
Mm-hmm.
that is healthy. So we all have foods that we like that are healthy and good for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? But somehow we've bought into this idea that, the packaged things are quick or, protein bars or protein powder or whatever. Like we've bought into all that narrative about all this packaged quick fix stuff.
Advertising.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. You guys.
Sorry. I sold makeup and telecom,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
one me.
But anyway, the diet, if you will look at what you eat and try to, hopefully there really are some things that are real food,
Mhm,
that are
mhm.
not just packaged. Um, for example, let's use a salad. I love salads, right? I could literally, for all of my adult life, I have just loved a Cobb salad.
Mhm.
Like for me, there's just like nothing better. There's tons of protein in there. It's got every ingredient that I love, but I really try to stay away from dairy. Dairy doesn't agree with me. It doesn't agree with most of the women that I work with.
Hmm.
And so I have to keep the cheese out of there,
Yep.
And most Cobb salads use ranch dressing.
Right.
God, it's like a
I have to
2,000
admit,
calorie salad.
well,
It's
I
a
don't care about the calories. Calorie counting is another thing that really is a total misnomer myth.
Walk
But
that back, honey.
I do care about toxicity. And when I'm eating things that are spiking my immune system and aren't agreeing with me, now my digestion just shuts down.
Yep.
Because my body's like in fight or flight mode trying to figure out how to deal with the toxicity. So I can eat that Cobb salad. I have to leave the cheese off, and I have to use a dressing that is more oil and vinegar, not cream based.
We're going to take a
And
quick
so that
commercial.
takes a little adjustment, but then I can enjoy my Cobb salad.
Perfect. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more with Dr. Gala Gorman. Welcome back to Crazy Rich Neighbors. So let's talk about detoxification, since you were taking us through when we eat things, for instance, dairy, or certain oils, maybe seed oils, things like that don't agree with us. How can we detox? What are the best methods of detoxing? And you also, we've read that you think that, or have said, detoxification, it's important, but it's risky. So can you tell us a little bit about what some of the risks could be?
You guys have done your homework. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
So it
Indeed.
was interesting learning, all about you and what you stand for.
So I evaluate 12 categories of toxicity.
Wow.
And what tends to happen is we're all really individual, and we've got this kind of we've got a genetic makeup, we've got our sort of emotional constitution that is a stew of things that happen to us, all the way back from in utero. Okay. And
Yep.
so we've got that as a base. And now we start adding in all this additional toxicity, right? And if you aren't dealing with too much underlying stress, and or your genetic makeup doesn't just make you have a sort of predisposition to having a reaction to something, you'll be able to consume these things, and your body just kind of kicks them off, right? It can eliminate pretty much whatever. Like, we all know those people, right, that can eat whatever and never gain weight. Even women, they're less common
They're
in women.
psychos.
But
Anomaly.
what do they usually, they say, if they're thin and you see them eating like, like a truck driver, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm just genetically gifted.
But are they
Half
really
the time
happy?
they're lying. Half
Exactly.
the
They're
time
throwing
lying.
up in the
Okay,
bathroom.
Okay. Or starving for the next 4 days.
Right.
They're not, though.
Oh,
Really,
hell. We
seriously,
just
they're
tell
not.
ourselves that to make us feel
I
better.
know, yeah, exactly.
But there are
And
some that do that, though.
Yeah,
Let's
and
be
there
real.
are some that
Bethany Frankel.
in truly are just sort of genetically able to handle it, and somehow, maybe
It
they
catches up with them, job.
and I will say that there are a lot of things that potentially are going on internally that we can't see. Like, maybe their body doesn't put on weight, but their blood pressure's through the roof.
Ah.
Or there's something else going on that we can't see from
Yeah.
the outside. Those of us who accumulate fat, get puffy, put on weight, it's for all to see.
Oh,
Kind of
yeah,
thing,
it is.
right? And so I think the important thing really to understand there is that what is toxic for us is not the same as what's toxic for another person. So if you have followed me, if you've read the book, you know that I shared some stories of Julie in particular was one of the stories from the latter part of the book. And Julie lived in a house with mold, with
Ugh.
black mold.
Oof.
And it was literally killing her.
Oh
Like,
my God.
she got to the point where she was wheelchair bound and thought she was dying.
God,
Nobody could
what?
figure out what was going on.
Holy crap.
And she lived in this house with her husband and her kids. And her husband
Oh.
and her kids weren't in a wheelchair
Right.
and
Wow.
totally disabled. And that's what happens. Like, it gets dismissed because everybody doesn't react the same way, right? And so nobody puts two and two together. Like, if you had everybody on a street have the same illness, like, one of the things I like to remind people of is the movie Aaron Brockovich, where, they had this toxic water that was causing a disproportionate number of people to get sick, but not everyone.
Right.
right? So somehow those people who didn't get sick had some genetic makeup, some combination that they were just able to manage it, but the other people couldn't, right? And so that's what happens with all toxicity. So if you feel like something's going on with you, if you're experiencing symptoms, you need to take that seriously, even if nobody else in your world is experiencing the same thing. That does not mean that the toxicity isn't in your environment or in something that is also, it's like the everybody ate dinner at that Chinese restaurant, and only half the people
Yeah.
spent the night in the bathroom,
Right.
right?
But
But
it's
the
like
other people,
it's like me and my alternaria mold allergy. We're surrounded by water and we're neighbors. And we live next to a beautiful protected mangrove that's full of trees, wet trees, and animal life, ocean and intercoastal. And, I've been tested and I have an alternaria mold allergy. Nobody else in my household has any issues with it, but the spores, they they thrive in wet environments.
right.
And so it's almost, I think that my allergies are exasperated by the level of stress that I have with work and what have you, and overachieving and overextending myself. But just to your point about like everybody in the same ecosystem and environment, and I'm the one that's like got sinusitis and bronchitis, from the
All the
same
itises.
environment, all the itises, but from this mold that's not impacting anybody else in our circle, and certainly not anybody else in my home.
So the answer is that you have to be extra mindful of reducing the other stressors, because the other stressors, meaning things in your diet that add stress, emotional stress from work and
Yeah.
other things like that, like all of those stressors that you can control,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be more mindful of
And
them.
it does get
Because
worse the more stress I get. That's when the
Yeah.
bronchitis,
Yeah.
symptoms, it starts to set in. And I do think stress hurt. Like I'm not creating this in my head.
Oh, I know you're not creating it.
And you've seen this.
She takes on way too much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That is true.
So then when you see the symptoms popping up, do you reach for a pain reliever, or do you take it seriously and say, whoa, 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 I got to dial the stress back to free up some resources so my body can deal with this?
I
You
plead
don't
the
have to you don't have to answer that question.
Well, I left a
That's
job after calling you crying, like
I
having my
know.
under the table moment, like I'm about to
Yeah.
have a nervous
But now you have two jobs, so like that didn't work.
Four.
That's one of those like proverbial questions.
But I
for
think,
everybody in the audience.
but you overachieved a bit though. How did you manage the transition between going from a CPA, owning your own firm, to becoming a doctor? That was some overachieving. How did you balance that? And what are some mistakes that women make when managing like health symptoms that could be related to stress?
So I like to say I was the earliest victim of midlife crisis. So when I tell you that that these symptoms can start in your mid 30s, it's how to ask me how I know, right? So I started working at an accounting firm a few days after I turned 16.
Oh my
So by the
gosh.
time I was in my mid 30s,
Oh,
I had
wow.
worked in the accounting firm, honestly, with the same group of people for 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So, you know, I I literally have been working since I was like 9 years old. And so I can totally relate to the overachieving, burning the candle at both ends person. Um, so when I started to kind of understand how backwards our approach to health and healing was, and seeing the signs of toxicity accumulating for myself, I turned to alternative methods and saw how beautiful that worked, and that, like, there was no turning back for me, right? And I already, because I had been doing it so long, and because it had just sort of been the thing that I went into kind of not even intentionally, like I just sort of fell into it because I was so young.
Mhm.
I was ready to do something different. And fortunately, because I was only in my, mid to late 30s, it wasn't that big of a deal, honestly, to reinvent myself. It wasn't like I was trying to do it at 60, right?
Right.
Although I will say that it's never too late.
I agree.
These days, midlife, I think of midlife as 40 to 80, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're anywhere in the first half of that midlife period, I mean, think of it like I had a whole career in accounting, went to college, passed the CPA exam, got my license, ran an accounting firm. I did all of that in a 20-year period. Had a successful accounting firm with a partner that I had a great relationship with, and just was ready to do something different. But if I started something right now in my early 60s, I'm only in my early 80s, and I've had 20 years
Yeah.
of it already.
True.
And
True.
so, we look at two guys, regardless of which side of the fence you're on, two guys that are basically 80 running for president,
Yeah.
right? And I can
Yeah.
tell you, like, if
Men,
you can be 80 and like be the leader of the free world, like, surely we need to be thinking, having
Yes.
more of a long-term strategy, long-term
I
approach to
think
this,
women write
taking
themselves
care of
off,
our
and
health.
society writes us off at a certain age, but we just have to keep pushing through,
My grandmother worked till she was 87 years old because she loved
Wow.
what she did.
Wow.
Yeah. How old was the Queen of England when she
Oh
passed
my
away?
96.
God. She
Something,
was
right?
a
96.
boss.
And she was still out,
Mhm.
every day doing, appearances and shaking hands,
It's mind over matter,
and
right?
yeah.
If you don't
And
mind, it doesn't matter.
so I just think that it's really important to, um, like, right now, if you're experiencing symptoms and you're like thinking, okay, I'm just going to kick this can down the road, like like where do you stop kicking the can down the road if you want to still be doing great
Mhm.
well into your 90s? I mean, I personally, I've said for as long as I can remember that I plan to live to 120. That may actually
Oh, wow.
go further, at some point, with the way, healthcare is improving. But if I'm going to live to 120, basically the period between 40 and 80 truly is midlife, right? I have the
Absolutely.
period 0 to 40. That was
Right.
the early part of my life. And I have the period from 80 to 120. But I can tell you right now, I don't want to live from 80 to 120 using a walker
No.
or in a wheelchair.
No. No,
No.
I
thank
want to
you.
be I want to be hiking and, walking the
Betting
beach.
younger men.
Yeah. I was don't tell my husband that. That's not fun. But yeah.
That was a reference to a storyline we had a couple episodes
Okay.
ago.
I hiked across Spain in
Wow.
June,
Did you
last June.
did you do
And
that Compostela?
yeah, the
I
Camino
want
de
to do
Santiago.
that. I
Yeah.
want to
What
do
is
that
that?
someday. It's like
Yeah, it was
it
awesome.
can be a religious pilgrimage for
Aw.
some people. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So I was in Santiago at the end, and I overheard this guy talking that was sitting at a table next to me, and I could tell that he was from the United States. He just had that kind of like, accent or whatever. And so I was talking to my husband because he was not still with me. He'd gone home a couple weeks prior. And so he heard me talking and knew I was from the United States as well. So we started chit chatting when we got off of our respective calls. And he said that he had just finished walking. They walked the Portuguese route, which is a little easier, not quite as strenuous as what I did, but still not a piece of cake.
Right.
And he had walked that with his 82-year-old mom.
Oh.
And he
God
said, you know, that
bless.
she had always wanted to do it and he didn't want her to like have to do it alone. So he went with her.
Oh.
And
God, if
and
she
I
can do it,
ended
we
up
can do it.
exactly. And so I literally like that's the first thing I told my husband. I said, you know what? I said, you know, literally that's 20 years into the future.
Yeah.
100% that is us.
That's
you know?
awesome.
That's beautiful.
And so, you know, that's what we need to be thinking about, ladies. Like, you can't kick the can down the road
True.
too far without jeopardizing your ability to be really mobile.
I
and
love that piece
enjoy
of advice.
that.
I do too.
That's short, sweet, and to the point.
Yep. And I think it resonates with you.
It does.
Good.
It
Well,
does.
This is a great way to end on a very happy, fruitful note.
Heed the doctor's warning.
Dr. Gala Gorman, it has been a pleasure. Where can our Bougie crew follow you and find your books and your website and your practice?
So the best thing to do is just to go to drgala.com. That's drgala.com. If you hit the homepage, scroll down, you'll see a link to get my book. If you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see a little form where you can subscribe to my newsletter. I write a newsletter every Sunday, just about every Sunday.
Wow.
And just kind of keep you on top of the latest things I'm thinking about. And then at the bottom are all the little social media badges.
Okay.
So you can find me wherever you like to consume your social pleasure. and I post everywhere. I'm everywhere. So
Awesome. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for
Yes.
joining us. Lord have
Have
mercy.
mercy.
So interesting.
Yes, that was. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I did too. It was
Yes.
very worthwhile.
Absolutely. So, my obsession this week is Rare Beauty by Selena Gomez. She has this beautiful, beautiful scent called Find Comfort, okay? And it's a body and hair mist.
Oh, I love a hair mist.
Yes, and it's cruelty-free, woody, earthy, without parabens. It has a layerable scent. I'm going to spray it on you.
Yes,
you ready?
please. Oh my God.
Oh,
We smell like Selena.
It's an uplifting fragrance with notes of sparkling lemon zest, jasmine, and cashmere wood that leaves the skin and hair feeling fresh, soft, and hydrated. It's earthy and woody, and it's actually quite delicious, and it's not expensive. It's only like $28. I recommend getting it on a TikTok shop because they give a lot of coupons because they want people to shop on there. So this is definitely a must try, and it comes in this wonderful, very, very good quality little sack. So check it out, you guys. Find Comfort by Rare Beauty.
So I love it. It's delicious. Very light too.
Yes.
So like if you have to like get on a flight or something, the
Yeah.
person next to you won't feel like your scent is overpowering, but you'll
Exactly.
smell very clean and
Yes.
fresh. Okay, my Bougie Bible pick this week is Gotex Swimwear. Now, they did a special line. They worked with The Crown on the most recent season 6, to recreate some of Princess Diana's most iconic swimming suits. And I purchased this little number. It is the leopard print suit that
is
Princess
hot.
Diana wore before her untimely death.
Aw.
But it's so cute, and I love Princess Diana, and I think it's such a great idea that the Crown went to Gotex, who made her original swimsuit, and said, hey, let's do something together when, we go over this period of her life in the show. So if you would like to get your own Princess Diana swimsuit, then go to Gotex-swimwear, that's Gottex, swimwear.com. And just, in the little search engine, just type in Princess Diana and the suit will come up. If you sign up for their newsletters, etc., you will get a 20% discount off your first purchase. And to our audio listeners, if you check out our YouTube channel, you can actually see the swimming suit. It's a fun animal print, little leopard, little tiger. And it's a very flattering cut, if I must say so myself.
It really is. Does it come in other prints?
They had a different, like a multicolored one, but I think that is no longer available.
Okay.
But you never know. It could pop up on the Real Real or Poshmark or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, only that first one is the
It's
Princess Di pattern.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep. That's it, y'all.
Yes, that's all we got. Share this ish with your favorite bad bitch.
Follow us on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss one episode.
Follow us on IG at Crazy Rich Neighbors Podcast, or on Facebook at CRM Podcast.
Or TikTok.
Yes.
And you can email us info@crazyrichneighbors.com.
And remember, if you have to ask who your crazy neighbor is,
It's probably you.
you.
And you, and you, and you, and you. Bye, Bougie Crew.
We love you.
Be good.
Bye. Bye, Benny Ben.
It's Benjamin.
Oh, Benjamin. Excuse-moi.
Bye.
Leave all that in. Leave all that in. That was funny.